Iran's oil industry is the oldest in the Middle East, and the country today ranks as the world's second largest exporter of crude oil. Total oil revenues for 1977 are estimated at some $25 billion, about 10 times the level before 1973, when under the Shahanshah's leadership, Iran assumed full and real control over the oil industry. The Shahyad Arya Mehr Monument, gateway to Tehran. President Jimmy Carter arrives at Tehran's Mehrabad Airport at 4:30 p.m. on December 31st, 1977. The President and Mrs. Rosalind Carter step from the plane in late afternoon sunshine to a fanfare of drums and trumpets. At the foot of the steps, they are met by the Shahanshah Arya Mehr and Empress Farah Pahlavi. After U.S. Secretary of State Cyrus Vance and other members of the presidential party have been introduced to their Imperial Majesties, Prime Minister Jamshid Amuzegar, the speakers of Iran's two houses of parliament, and other senior Iranian officials are introduced to the president.
On behalf of the Shahbanu, myself, and the Iranian people, I welcome you. Mrs. Carter and your delegation on Iranian soil. We cherish your arrival as the head of state of a country with which Iran always had unshakable bonds and the best of relations, and at the same time as an exalted friend and the most esteemed guest. We sincerely hope that you will take back with you happy memories of your short visit to our country. And in the meantime, we sincerely hope that all the stages of your present trip will be marked by the best of successes. For the Shahbanu and I, it is great pleasure to be your host only a few weeks after our trip to your country. Your distinguished personality, sincerity, goodwill, moral virtues, and also the hospitality and kindness of Mrs.
Over
Carter
300 newsmen from the United States and other countries have come to Tehran to cover the meeting.
Welcome to our country.
President Jimmy Carter
Your
then
Imperial
replies.
Majesties, distinguished officials and citizens of Iran, my own nation has been blessed this year by an official visit of His Imperial Majesty the Shah and by the Shahbanu Empress Farah. This was a fine gesture of friendship, and we also benefited from extensive discussions between the Shah and myself of important issues for Iran and for the United States.
The
I am proud
President
and
then
pleased
mentions
to
the
be
two
able to
issues which
come
he
to
says have
Iran
most dominated his
at the
thoughts in the
end of
past
this
year.
year.
The first is to solve the economic problems of the world's rich and the world's poor, highlighted by the energy problem. It is because I respect the Shah's leadership in energy matters that I have come to him for consultation and advice, he says. The second major issue, President Carter says, is to bring peace to troubled areas of the world. He mentions the hope shared by the Shahanshah and himself that peace will soon come to the Middle East, and their joint belief that the alliance between their two countries will reduce tensions throughout the world. After 40 minutes of private discussions between the two heads of state, they are joined by high-ranking delegations, including on the Iranian side, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abbas Ali Khalat Bari, and the Ambassador to Washington, Ardashir Zahedi, and on the United States side by Secretary of State Cyrus Vance, the US Ambassador to Iran, William Sullivan, and the President's Assistant for National Security Affairs. President Carter tells reporters afterwards that the talks have been excellent and that he has common views with the Shahanshah Arya Mehr. Later that evening, President and Mrs. Carter arrive at the Niavaran Palace, where a banquet is given in their honor by their Imperial Majesties, the Shahanshah Arya Mehr and Empress Farah Pahlavi. The guests are presented to the President and Mrs. Carter before going into the banqueting hall. Earlier in the evening, the President's press secretary told newsmen that an agreement has been reached on cooperation in the peaceful use of nuclear energy, including the sale of atomic reactors to Iran, and in coordinating efforts by the two governments to further the cause of peace in the Middle East and Africa. At the banquet, the Shahanshah makes a speech.
Mr. President, Mrs. Carter, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it gives the Shah Banu and myself great pleasure to welcome you to our country. This reception is particularly auspicious since it takes place on the eve of 1978, and your presence here represents a New Year's gift for your Iranian friends. In our country, according to ancient tradition, the visit of the first guest in the new year is an omen for that year. And although the Iranian New Year is celebrated with the advent of spring, nevertheless, since the distinguished guest tonight is such a person of goodwill and achievement, naturally we consider it as a most excellent omen. Mr. President, you now have come to a country which has always had unshakable links with your country and your great nation. We are united together by a special relationship made all the closer by a wide community of mutual interests which we share in our firm determination to contribute to the maintenance of world peace and security and assuring human progress and betterment. Humanitarianism, liberty, goodwill, constructiveness, and creativeness, which are the distinctive qualities of the great American nation, have always been highly regarded by us. During World War II, I personally had the pleasure of meeting President Franklin Roosevelt in our capital city. Since then, I had the opportunity of welcoming in Iran several presidents of the United States, and I personally have also traveled repeatedly to your great country. I am glad to state that all these visits have been accompanied with a spirit of friendship and cooperation, which is the distinct quality of our relationship. An example of this cooperation is the long-term economic exchange agreement between Iran and the United States, which was recently signed and in its scope is the largest agreement ever signed between us and any other country. Almost 100 years ago, the first American ambassador, Samuel G.W. Benjamin, who had been assigned by President Chester Alan Arthur, came to Iran. In his book, Persia and the Persians, he wrote, "Iran today is a weak and unknown country, but certainly this country will step into the path of progress and in the not too distant future will again play an important role in the world." Now, with this present prediction coming true, our country has started its role within its potentialities and possibilities. Perhaps it need not be mentioned that this is a positive and constructive role and in conformity with the principles that your great country has always supported independence and of which you, Mr. President, are the most notable advocate. I entertain excellent memories of the fruitful discussions which I had with you in Washington a few weeks ago. The cordial hospitality extended by Mrs. Carter and yourself, and the warmth of your attitude and the understanding which you showed in our discussions have deeply touched me. I am glad that our discussions were so meaningful, particularly in the case of energy, which is one of the most important and vital problems of our era. We, who are among the greatest producers, share the same view that the present unrestricted use of oil, which is an expendable and finite resource, is not logical, and that this valuable commodity, instead of the present normal daily use, should be utilized mainly